I was going to do a 20-page presentation, and I'm normally nervous. I've decided to can that, and I'm going to go completely ad hoc. So I'm not nervous, I'm myself. So bear with me, all right? It all started for me as a young boy. I was just as likely to see my dad doing the ironing, my mum doing the DIY, my mum going to work, my dad going to work. They had a true partnership. My first day at work was the 13th of February 1977, a long time ago. The following day, my work colleagues, following day being Valentine's Day, my work colleagues noticed that this 17-year-old boy hadn't got any Valentine's cards, so they kindly went out and brought me a girly calendar to put up in front of me. That was what life was like in the office in those days. I was really surprised, bearing in mind my home life, when I walked into that office and I saw there were parts of the company that were totally dominated by men, and there were other parts of the company that were totally dominated by women. In those days, men couldn't type. They only learned to type when the internet came out. So there was typing pools, where the men used to walk along and take their letters to be typed. The girls in the typing pool, the women in the typing pool would type them. 17-year-old boy, the typing pool was really a great place for me to go. I was always putting my hand up to go to the typing pool because, obviously, there were lots of young girls there, but there were also always parties going on there. Because these young typists would leave. They'd leave quite often because they got married. Yeah? That was what life was like in 1977. I'm going to move forward and just show you one slide. I got involved in payments when that was FinTech. Yeah? Does anyone know what that is? Did you say a telex machine? Do you want to explain to the rest of the audience what a telex machine is?
I don't know, we have one in our house, it was dusty.
It was dusty, all right. Okay, well, my first job in FinTech was selling these, all right? This was the height of technology in 1988, 89. It didn't have memory. This was the memory, all right? What used to happen, let me tell me how you used to get a telex out. People in the back office, men in the back office, in payments, would write out a carbon-copied payment instruction. They were usually men, three types. There was John. John had been doing the same job for 30 years. Yeah? He wasn't particularly well educated. And he was definitely white because he was working in an office. And he was resigned to the fact that he would never break through the glass ceiling. There's a real glass ceiling. Next to him, there was a young guy called Peter. He was on the graduate training program. He had been to the right schools, the right universities, and his dad had got him the job. Yeah. He was destined for the top. He was spending a month in the payments department before moving on and getting his first managerial role. Once that carbon paper had been, payment instruction had been completed, it was put in the outbox and Pete from the post room would come and pick it up. Pete from the post room had been a post room person all his life. That was where he was destined to stay, and indeed he retired from there. He'd pick this carbon paper up and take it down to the telex room. The telex room was full of machines like this that were operated by the ladies in the telex room. It was ladies because ladies could type, men couldn't. What Jean would do is she'd type out a telex off, you call it offline these days. She'd type it out, a carbon copy would come out the top, and it would be remembered on this ticker tape. Yeah? She would then put that back in the outbox. It would be brought up from the post room to John in the back office. John would agree that the carbon copy and what the telex room had typed were correct. He'd sign it, he'd get it authorised by his manager, he'd put it back in the post box, we'd go down to the test key room. Do you remember test key? No, right, I'm showing my age. Banks to bank, talk to each other. You needed some level of security, so the test key room was where some very clever men would look through books, and because it was a Monday, it would be a 1. Because it was a US dollar, it would be 48. Because it was £1 million, it would be another number. They'd add all those together and come up with a test key, which they'd put on top of the telex. We'd go back to the telex room, the telex machine would be put online, and the ticker tape would be fed back through this, and the telex would go with the addition of the test key. It took about 3 or 4 minutes to send one payment instruction. Okay, reason for the story is we've come so far in payments in the 30 years since then. Yeah. Men have come a long way thanks to equality since then. A few weeks after starting my first job selling telex machines, I had my first child. My boss very kindly, well, my wife had my first child. My boss very kindly gave me the afternoon off. That was paternity leave then. Those glass ceilings we talked about have gone, or going, for men. And indeed, increasingly for women. I worked in an environment that, frankly, people say they want to change the world for their daughters, people that look like me. I want to change the world for my son as well. Because a lot of the environments I worked in weren't very nice. Yeah? The point of what I'm saying here is I'd like to change the name of the conference to the European People in Payments Conference. Because we're not going to get over that line to the world we want to live in, we all want to live in, unless men are on board as well. Yeah? We've got to change the dialogue, got to change the tone, because we've got so many, we as men have had so many advantages over the years for your fight and everything you've done for us. It's about time we, and my friend here, Steve, who I've never met before, is going to talk about his story in a minute, if that's all right, Steve. I'm sure you're sitting there thinking, I've put him on the spot. We have got so many advantages in our lives thanks to your fight. It's about time we joined you on the journey. I met Steve about 2 seconds ago because I was sitting in front of him, and it's really great at conferences like this to see some men about. But I thought, I wonder what Steve's story is. And Steve's going to share it with you now, if that's all right, Steve.
Yeah, sure.
Have you got a mic for Steve?
One on the chair. Yeah. So you're scared?
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, by the way. This wasn't planned at all, so give a big clap for Steve. Thank you.
Yeah, so
I get paid for this, by the way.
Yeah. So I'm Steve Nuttall. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for Payment Gateway at Barclays in the UK. I'm 13 years Barclays, 20 years financial services. Before that, 2-time serve apprenticeship. So I've started my career back in the day fixing washing machines. So I've come a fair way myself, from washing machines up to heading up a 200-strong technology division. I'm really fortunate when I look at my leadership team and the actual team that I work with in Fleet in Hampshire. We're a very diverse organisation. My leadership team is 7 people. 3 of those are women. And what Mark said to me is, you're not going, are you? You can stay. And will you just say what diversity means to you? And I thought about it for those few minutes Mark gave me while he was talking about those telex machines. And to be honest, what it means is listening. It really is about listening. Because it's the point of view that counts. People look at things from different angles. People from different cultures, different backgrounds, different genders have a different perspective on each topic. And I think one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me many years ago by a former CIO, I would say, yeah, it's been on camera, so why not? Probably the worst boss I ever had, but it gave me the best piece of advice I've ever had. And we'd been to one of these senior meetings, and I was on my way up the ladder, and it came out of it, and he said, "You didn't say anything." I said, "Well, I agreed with what was being said. What was the point?" And he said, "You're at the table because of the position you're in. Your right to remain is by what you say. And by contributing to those sessions, by actually giving my opinion, I agree, particularly because, or I don't agree because of this, or have we thought about?" It was a perspective. And so sitting around the table with a bunch of commercial people, financiers, tax people, the tech guy agrees or doesn't agree for a particular reason, and it's a contribution. And this is a piece of information that I've passed on to the many mentees that I've had over the last few years. And I've been particularly lucky because you managed to get an interesting find here. I actually was pulled out a few years ago to support our Women in India leadership position, and I've been mentoring a lady out in India for about 3 years now. And you know, it's really interesting when you change the cultures, you cross that organisational divide and the cultural divide to see how other people think and how they talk and how they think about situations. So to me, diversity is about listening, making sure you listen and giving people the opportunity to find their voice. And if those people find their voice, the richness of the conversation, the richness of the decisions you're making and the quality of the decisions you're making is vastly improved.
Steve, thank you. Thank you.